Thank you, and hello everyone, wherever you may be. Today we're going to talk about bots and the different types of bots. And before we get into that, just maybe a bit of a brief introduction. So my name's Kent Weare. I'm a Principal Program Manager lead on the Microsoft PowerCat team inside of the Power Platform org at Microsoft, where I focus on working with customers on emerging technologies, including the technologies we're going to see here today. So that's Power Virtual Agents and Power Automate and the new Robotic Process Automation service that's available inside of Power Automate. Here's some additional coordinates for you if you're looking to interact with me at Wearzy on Twitter, and then I do have my YouTube channel listed there as well. Just to want to call out that the Microsoft 365 Collaboration Conference is set up for next year in March in Las Vegas. So do make note of the website there and those dates if that's something that you're interested in pursuing. Naturally, we've got some sponsors that have helped make this event possible. So do want to call out their contributions here and encourage you to go ahead and visit their websites and their social media channels to find out more. So with that said, let's go ahead and let's dive into the content. So here's the agenda that we're going to focus on today. Number one, what are bots? Then we're going to get into a Power Virtual Agents introduction and then get into demos. So I've structured this in sort of two forms. We're going to do just a hello world sort of a demo, and then we're going to get into a more advanced demo as well. Then we're going to do something similarly on the RPA side, so robotic process automation, and we're going to talk about Power Automate and UI flows. And then once again, we'll get into some demos as well, and then I'll leave you with a call to action and some additional content that you can go ahead and leverage as you pursue your own bot creation capabilities. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and let's dive in here. So what is a bot? Obviously, bot is a bit of a loaded term, but in general, you can think of it as a form of automation. And oftentimes it's automation in the form of interacting or emulating what a human would typically be doing. And this generally leaves humans to be having more cycles where they can go focus on tasks that require more creative thought or collaborative thought. And so what we want to focus on here is like scenarios where we've got a lot of repetition and how we can go about and automate those specific tasks and free people up to focus on more important things. Now, when we talk about bots, the types of bots we're going to talk about today include robotic process automation. And when it comes to RPA, and we'll get into this in more details later on, there's a common theme. And the theme is really around recording a task, going ahead and then automating that task, and then having the ability to play back that task many, many times. And what makes this capability unique or valuable is the ability to pass inputs or parameters into that automation, and then to be able to retrieve or extract outputs and to be able to use those in downstream processes. And so we'll get much deeper into this a little bit later, but this is the current experience that you do encounter when you go ahead and try to automate a specific function using desktop automation in this case. Now, switching gears a little bit to conversational chatbots. This is also a class of chatbots. It's a little bit different in the sense that you typically have a customer or an end user that converses with a bot. And where this bot comes into play here is the fact that a bot can go ahead and retrieve or receive utterances or intents that are being made by an end user or a customer and try to understand what they're trying to achieve, and then go ahead and fulfill that action through a series of questions like follow-up questions or steps. These could be actions. And this is how we can take advantage of artificial intelligence and natural language processing to understand those intents and then be able to respond back with some sort of statement, follow-up action. And if you ever get to a point where the bot isn't able to go ahead and address the needs of that user, you can typically go ahead and escalate to a live agent. And certainly that's a capability that exists inside of Power Virtual Agents. as well as a lot of other different chatbot tools and solutions that exist out there. So with that brief introduction out of the way, let's go ahead and dive deeper into Power Virtual Agents. Now, it is worth calling out that both of the services that we're going to talk about today, Power Automate and Power Virtual Agents, are part of the overall Power Platform. And this in itself is a fairly unique proposition relative to a lot of other competitors out there, in the sense that we can go ahead and take advantage of a whole roster of tools that we can leverage to build a very comprehensive solution. Naturally, we've got Power BI from an analytics and reporting perspective, Power Apps from a cross-platform mobile and web application perspective, Power Automate, where we can go ahead and craft up cloud-based workflows and automations, and then naturally Power Virtual Agents that we can go ahead and create these conversational bots. Now, all of these services are unique and great unto themselves, but what makes them really special is like the better together story. And where that emerges is by taking advantage of this lower tier of platform components, which gives us access to data connectors. So over 300 different connectors that we can leverage. Power Apps Portals is a new capability that allows us to expose either internal or external web-based portal experiences to users and consumers. And then we've got AI Builder, which is a democratized access to AI technology, which allows us to do things like forms processing and computer recognition. And then lastly, we've got Common Data Service, or CDS, which is a data platform that we can go ahead and build all of these assets on top of. And so when it comes to Power Virtual Agents, really what the goal here is to empower people to drive more business value and create natural conversational AI. And so some of the challenges that exist today is that oftentimes users or customers do want to use self-service rather than waiting on the phone for an agent to respond. And even recently, I can speak for this myself, where, you know, much like I'm sure a lot of you folks have had different periods of time where your internet is working better than others. And so I had to reach out to my ISP, and I was just envisioning a horrible experience of waiting on the phone to try to talk to someone. And so I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go to their website and just see if they have a bot. And they did have a bot. It was actually a pretty good experience. And much to my surprise, of course, it tries to do the robot or the AI-driven conversation, and we get through some very simple troubleshooting, and then I'm at the point where I'm like ready to talk to an agent. And sure enough, that agent was able to respond to my needs very interactively and actually quite quickly, and we're able to get the problem sorted out, which was great to know. Now, another challenge that occurs in this space is that customers are expecting consistency and continuity across channels. And what that means is I might start a conversation with a bot, and I might be asking questions and it's giving me responses or suggestions. But if I do want to go ahead and escalate to a live agent, I want that conversation to come with me. I don't want to have to restate what is my name, what is my account number, what is my email address, what is my date of birth, etc. That should be fluid, and that should be able to come with me as part of that journey. And then lastly, we do see that a lot of these channels, though, are still managed in silos, which is unfortunate. That means I might start a conversation with over, say, a website or through Twitter or through some other social media channel, but when I have to go talk to a live agent, they have no record of me actually, you know, going through that other channel. And that's a bummer, because now I have to restate all of that information that I've already provided to the organization, which is not great. But these are all challenges that can be addressed using Power Virtual Agents. Now, one of I'd say the challenges with bots, so bots are certainly nothing new. And certainly from a Microsoft perspective, we've had tools like Azure Bot Framework, Azure Bot Service, where we can go ahead and build out these experiences. And those have been around for a few years and are quite comprehensive. I'd say one of the challenges with those previous approaches is that you do need some development skills to go ahead and build out those chatbot experiences. And, you know, for developers, that's great, but there's this reality where we've got more demand than we have supply in terms of who can go ahead and build out these great conversational experiences. The other aspect to all of this is that we've got like subject matter experts that know their business. For example, customer service. They know what their customers want. They know the questions. They know the pain points. They know what are the areas of pain, and they want to be able to solve those problems. but how can you go ahead and democratize who can go ahead and build those solutions, especially that have that subject matter expert. And I think that's really the opportunity with Power Virtual Agents, is the ability to democratize who can build these types of solutions. And this is why Power Virtual Agents is a great fit in the Power Platform family, is that the whole mantra of the Power Platform is democratizing who can go ahead and build out these solutions. And yes, there is this complexity spectrum, and simple things are going to be very simple, and then more complex things will be more complex and might require more technical abilities, but there truly is a low barrier of entry. And I do believe that once people are passionate and have an opportunity to get exposed to the technology, they're going to go ahead and learn and sort of expand their capabilities as well. And so what this means is that Power Virtual Agents can be used by a very broad audience, whether it's your customers, whether it's your subject matter experts inside of your organization, and certainly from an IT and dev perspective, there's nothing wrong with using these tools as well. You should aim to improve your productivity regardless of where you sit within the organization. So let's just talk a little bit about the underlying technology or the tech stack that's supporting Power Virtual Agents. And so this is a situation where the Power Virtual Agents product is standing on the shoulders of giants, where we are able to take advantage of all of these other investments inside of Microsoft in order to build this solution. So we have things like Azure Cognitive Services under the hood, where we can take advantage of all of the investments in AI from a Microsoft perspective. We do sit on top of the bot framework, where we're able to take advantage of all of those investments around building conversational experiences, for customers at scale that run on top of Azure, across our data centers around the world. And then we've got the Power Platform. And this is a great extensibility point where we can go ahead and tap into all of these other connectors that exist through some deep integration with Power Automate. And we're going to see a lot of that today. And so this is what makes this specific service unique and special, is that even though it's going to be very intuitive and simple to use on the surface, there's a lot of abstractions and sophistication under the hood that really makes this service so powerful. And so I'm going to just walk you through sort of a simple life cycle of a bot, and then we're going to get right into the tool and start seeing some demos. And so this is the Power Virtual Agent Maker portal, where you can go ahead and just create a bot. And it's, point and click, hands on the keyboard, provide the name of a bot. Then what you can do is you can get started using a feature called Suggested Topics. Now, this is kind of similar to Q&A Maker. There's some shared technology. It's not exactly the same, but the idea here is that you can go ahead and point this tool at a public-facing URL or website that has essentially content that is structured in the form of frequently asked questions. So question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. And then what it allows you to do is it sucks in all of this content and starts to build out like a scaffold of all of the conversations that you could have around that content. You naturally have the ability to go ahead and tweak it, modify it, enable, disable, etc., and sort of can tailor it to your needs. And it's a great way to get started and basically to get up, because there's a lot of time invested in taking content that's already produced and then ingesting it into the tool. This is the ability to ingest it. Then what you can go ahead and do is you can basically author conversations or topics using natural language processing and something called slot extraction and variables, which I'll talk about here soon. So think of this much like designing a conversation. If you were going to go and have an end user or a customer reach out to you, what are some of the questions that they would ask you to start that conversation? And then what might be some of the questions you ask in return in order to go ahead and get more information so that you can go about helping them? And so it's really a unique experience where you're kind of creating a workflow around a conversation through a series of questions and answers and conditions where you can basically work down a tree essentially around getting them down to the point where you can specifically address what they're looking for. Now, naturally, we don't want to have like these redundant questions being asked, and that's where we can take advantage of a feature called slot extraction. So for example, I could, might say, I'm interested in sports tickets. And then a natural response might be, okay, what sport are you interested in? baseball, football, hockey, etc. But if I just said, I'm interested in baseball tickets, then I wouldn't even need to prompt them that second time. So that's an example of slot extraction where if we know that we already have an answer downstream in our conversation, we can just basically skip over it, which is a cool feature. And once again, back to that user experience, something that an end user will enjoy. And then also we have variables. This is the ability to store these responses that have come back from customers or end users, and then we can use them later on in our conversation, or we can pass them over to our extensibility points. Now, one of the extensibility points, and this is certainly from a low code, no code perspective, is Power Automate. And we can go ahead and call a flow and pass in those variables into the flow, perform some processing, and then return back a response from flow that can also be stored as a variable and then presented to the end user. Now, Power Automate isn't the only extensibility feature that we do have. We also have the ability to reach out to Azure Bot Framework and to ingest a skill into this experience as well. And so you'll hear this term within the Power Platform called no cliffs. And I really feel that Power Virtual Agents does a great job of providing a no cliff experience. So you think about it, you can start from suggested topics and have no code or configuration, basically no like sort of complex technical things, and provide a knowledge-based bot. Then you can get to that next level of extensibility in a no-code, low-code fashion and plug into Power Automate and use these connectors to talk to different systems. And then if you're still not able to achieve your business requirements, then go write some code in the bot framework and then be able to ingest those skills into the Power Virtual Agents canvas like you're seeing here, and go ahead and call it from that perspective. So it truly does allow you to sort of grow into the tool, which is great to see. Naturally, once you've gone ahead and built out your experience, you want to expose it so people can actually start using it. And so there's a variety of different channels where you can publish your bot to. So naturally, like a custom website, a mobile application. You can also publish it to Microsoft Teams, which is naturally for internal bots a great place to publish it to. Then we also have some external services like Facebook and Slack and some other additional services there as well. Now, this is another cool feature that's part of Power Virtual Agents, and that's analytics. So how do you know if your bot is actually being well received by your customers? Well, one way is to actually be able to capture that feedback as you're having conversations, but you certainly don't want this to be a nuisance either, right? So there are things where we can determine when someone drops out of a conversation, and that would be a sign that they've been disengaged. But we also provide the ability to include a short survey where we can include some basically icons or emojis where you can indicate, yes, I'm sad and you've got an upside down frown face going on, or I'm happy and I'm smiling from ear to ear. So those are experiences that are captured out of the box, and then you can go ahead and see where you should be spending more time in investing in your bot to make it even a better experience. So with that said, let's go ahead and let's just jump into just a hello world demo, and then we will get into a more advanced demo here shortly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to Power Virtual Agents or powerva.microsoft.com. And this is a maker portal. It's going to look very similar to Power Automate. There's obviously common designs and themes that are being used in the service itself. On the left-hand side, I've got my navigational links that I can go ahead and jump into more specific areas of the tool itself. I've got home. I can go ahead and get some information. I can reach out to the community. I can access documentation. These are all things that just welcome me when I enter the experience. The first place I want to head to is what's called topics. And there's two types of topics. There's your system. Whoops. Just give me a moment here. Okay, sorry about that. So here I've got my topics. There's two types of topics. I've got system topics, and these are essentially out of the box. These are what Microsoft's providing you, and we'll take care of some common areas of a conversation. So for example, a greeting, right? Typically you're going to start off a conversation by saying hello, good morning, good afternoon. And these are all basically phrases that Microsoft has cataloged that would allow you to enter into this specific topic. Similarly, we've got goodbye. And so that would be another system topic where it would provide a lot of examples of what does goodbye look like. And these are things that we don't have to go build ourselves. Whereas if you were in other chatbot experiences, you might have to handle all of these different types of greetings or goodbyes in order to model your conversation. On top of that, escalation is another one, right? There's many different ways where I could say, I need to talk to a human. And so what Microsoft has done is bake some of these already into the platform itself. We do have some lessons that show up here. And these would just be, when you go in and log into the PVA experience for the first time, you can go ahead and play with these examples. They deal with like store and store hours, and you can get a sense of how all of these sort of conversations work. But let's just go ahead and start one ourselves, and let's just keep it quite simple here. So let's go ahead and create a topic, and let's just say this is going to be our dinner topic. And I can go ahead and provide some phrases of what I might want for dinner. So I could say like, what's for dinner? I'm hungry. Let's get sushi for dinner, and just provide a lot of different examples of how someone might start a conversation around having dinner. Now, naturally, the more examples you provide, the more accurate this will become. And certainly when we start this conversation, it doesn't have to be word for word, because we can take advantage of natural language processing in order to understand the intent of what the person is trying to say. Once I've established my trigger phrases, I can go ahead and enter this authoring canvas. And this is essentially that workflow-like experience that I was talking about, where we can go ahead and model our conversation. And so the first thing we might want to say is welcome to the dinner bot. And then we might want to go ahead and ask a follow-up question and say, so ask a question. And here's where we have the ability to leverage what's called entities, which show up on the left-hand side of the screen here. And Microsoft has provided a lot of different entities that we can leverage. And these help with understanding the conversation, but also to provide some level of validation. And so, for example, if we wanted to talk about money, we can go ahead and use that essentially as a data type. And so if someone tries to enter in information that isn't related to money, well, then naturally we can say, sorry, I don't understand. Can you try again? Same thing with numbers, dates, cities, country, regions, etc. Now, in this case, we're just going to use multiple choice, and these are just going to be strings. So we can say, what kind of cuisine are you interested in? And then provide options. So this could be barbecue, this could be vegetarian, and perhaps like seafood is another option. And so what you can see as I'm adding all of these different options, we're starting to sort of build out all of these different conditions, which allows us to uniquely handle each of these different options if we wanted to. Another thing we can do here is we can go ahead and store this value in a variable. So we're just going to go ahead and call this cuisine. Now, the next question I want to ask is, for how many people is this? And so this is a question that's going to apply to all of these different cuisines. It doesn't really matter regardless of that. So I can just go ahead and start on the left-hand side. It could be in the middle. It's arbitrary. And just ask another question. And in this case, I'm just going to say, for how many people? And in this case, I'm going to provide a number. I'm going to request that this be a number. And here we're just going to go ahead and call this num people, and then hit done. Now I want to be able to ask this question across all of these different streams. So what I can now do is go ahead and just connect them. I can click on the plus sign and then just drag them over. And then what will happen is the end user will then be prompted to provide the number of people. And then we'll just go ahead and show a message. Okay, I will order. And then we can take advantage of variables. In this case, it would be cuisine for, and then we'll include our num people variable and then just indicate people. At this point, we can go ahead and hit save. Now, naturally, we want to go ahead and test our bot. So on this bottom left-hand corner, we can go ahead and click on test. And now what we can do is go ahead and test our bot. And we'll see this in real time, this debugging experience where we can follow our conversation. We can also click on this variable watch and we'll see these variables being populated as we get into a conversation. Naturally, when you have more complex conversations, this becomes even more valuable. So let's go ahead and let's just say, you know, what's for dinner tonight? And so what's happened is this has woken up and basically provided our message, welcome to DinnerBot, and then what kind of cuisine are you interested in? And so I can go ahead and just say, I'm interested in barbecue. And for, now in this case, I can just even type it in if I want, and it'll be able to interpret that 5 being spelt out like that is actually the number 5. And now I can go ahead and respond back to it. So that's sort of the hello world demo. And what I want to do is jump into another use case here, just to make sure we have enough time for RPA as well. Now, in this case, what I've done is I've built out essentially like a service desk bot. And I'm going to take advantage of a few things here. I'm going to take advantage of the Graph API, where I can authenticate my end user, understand who they are, and then I can go interface with ServiceNow, a popular IT service management tool. And we can all do this through a bot instead of me having to email the help desk or worse, call the help desk or service desk and basically try to get some attention. So let's flip back over to Power Virtual Agents here. And we've got a service desk bot. And here's all of the different sort of issues or utterances that can wake up my bot. And so I'm just going to start off and say, I am having an issue with my network. And you'll also find that there is some forgiveness around spelling mistakes as well. Now, what it is prompting me to do is I need to go ahead and log in. And so this is because I'm in essentially a test experience. I get punted over to a login page where I can go ahead and retrieve a token that I can pass into this conversation. When it comes to tools like Teams where you're already logged in, there's some SSO functionality that's going to be out here imminently that'll address that use case. So now that I'm dealing with this help desk bot, I've indicated that I've got a network issue, but what are the different types of network issues that do exist here? And this is an example of slot filling where I didn't get prompted for other examples of what is my issue related to, right? I didn't get asked for hardware, software, network, or my service desk tickets. I jumped right to network. So that saved me from having to answer that question. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and click on Wi-Fi as being my issue. And here I'm just going to say my connection keeps dropping. And so what's happening now is we're going to go ahead and reach out to Power Automate, and a flow is being kicked off in the background where it's going to go ahead and make a call to Graph, and then it's going to do some orchestration with ServiceNow and create a ticket. And so here we have a ticket that's been created, 10060, and if we head over to ServiceNow and let's refresh, we have the ticket that's been created. Now, in this case, just to show you the next part of the demo, I'm going to pretend that I'm working in the service desk and I'm going to pick this ticket up. Picking up ticket, and I will go change this state to be in progress, and I can go ahead and update this. So maybe as an end user, I'm interested in like understanding like what's going on with my ticket. Is this being resolved? Like I haven't heard from a technician yet. So I'm going to go ahead and say that no, that didn't answer my question. And I will go ahead and rephrase my question and says, show me my tickets. And so now I can go ahead and say, oh, show me my service desk tickets. And then I have an option of like, show me my last open ticket, my last closed ticket, or my last 5 tickets. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click on show me my last open ticket. And here we can see that we've got my ticket that ends in 60. And we also have the notes from the technician who had just started working on that ticket. Now, just to quickly show you how this works, what I've got here is as part of my Power Virtual Agent conversation, I'm going to go ahead and pass in a couple parameters or inputs into my Power Automate flow. And in this case, it's related to the show me my tickets. So I can go ahead and pass in the ticket type, which in this case would be show me my last open ticket. And I need to pass in my auth token because I was authenticated. We can pass in that token over to Power Automate. It can then use that token to look up inside of Graph API who I am and know exactly who I am, so that when we will go and log my ticket into ServiceNow, that it's logged underneath my name. And so here we go. If this is the Power Automate flow where I'm going to go ahead and get tickets. So here I can take advantage of the Power Virtual Agents trigger, and these are the inputs. So notice that these are the same 2 inputs that showed up in my Power Virtual Agents canvas, and now I can go ahead and populate those. Here I've just got some variables that I use just to help sort of organize my data. I can go ahead and make a graph call, and in this case I'm using the auth token that has been passed in from Power Virtual Agents, and then I'm just going to get details about myself, as in like the logged in user. Once I've got those details, I can go ahead and list any sort of existing records for that user in order to get their ID. And so ServiceNow has some very specific sort of requirements. Or when you create a ticket and you want to be able to relate it to other entities, you need to go ahead and pass in that system ID, which I'm actually using here in order to retrieve the last open tickets. This is kind of like OData. It's basically ServiceNow's query language where you can go ahead and basically filter out records. Then what I go ahead and do is I just need to do some massaging here, where I go ahead and get the work notes because that's stored in a separate entity, and then basically go ahead and populate some variables that I'll then use inside of this response action to Power Virtual Agents. And I'm using Markdown to help out with some of the formatting. And so that's part of the reason why I've broken this up. And so this is the one stream of work. If I wanted to go ahead and get my closed tickets, it looks very similarly, except the filter query is going to be different based on a different state. And then the otherwise, I'll go ahead and retrieve the last 5 tickets, all using this ServiceNow connector. So this is an example where you can go ahead and build out a conversational experience without writing code. Obviously, there's some technical details here, but we didn't have to write code. And this is what really accelerates your ability to deliver these types of experiences. Now, I'm going to jump ahead here just in the interest of time and talk a little bit about RPA now. So what is robotic process automation? It's essentially a way to connect to legacy systems where APIs may not be available or connectors may not be available. And so what you do is you would go ahead and emulate or reproduce the steps that a human would typically do when they interface with that specific system. And so what Power Automate provides is this holistic automation platform, sort of regardless of your persona. You could be an end user that's focused on personal or team productivity. You could be an experienced developer who might be writing custom connectors and dealing with some more advanced scenarios, or you could be an IT admin who is looking to improve your productivity through automation. Maybe it's provisioning services, it's turning off Azure VMs, starting and stopping them. It could be provisioning access. These are all very valid use cases for Power Automate. And so what Power Automate, its unique value proposition here is the ability to converse with modern systems through APIs. And we just saw examples of that where we can talk to tools like ServiceNow and Graph API because rich APIs exist, and we can do that quite efficiently. But there might be scenarios where we can't because an API might not exist, or we might not have access to it. Sometimes you have these managed services where they provide basically like a extranet type solution, and you have access to their solution through a web browser, but no access to the underlying data. Well, that could be a great candidate to use RPA, as could a legacy ERP system, where it might be very expensive and complicated to go build some sort of system interface to talk to that system. So why not go ahead and just automate through the GUI? And you do that through a recording experience where you can then automate that task and then go ahead and execute it. Now, there are two flavors, and I won't go too deep into this just in the interest of time, but we've got attended and unattended. So attended is there almost like to assist a user in real time, where a user might go ahead and click a button that will kick off an automated UI process that might go fetch a bunch of data or could insert data into a bunch of different systems, but without having the user go do that themselves. Then you've got unattended, where you can typically scale out and have these batch processes that might run overnight. And based upon a number of inputs that come in, you can go ahead and spread out that workload across multiple VMs. And so Power Automate and UI Flow support both of these types of models. And just so everyone's clear, this service did reach general availability on April 2nd. And so this is in production. And since that time, we've seen a lot of interest in the technology now that it's in GA. So let's just go ahead and do a quick hello world, and then I'll show you a more advanced example where we actually bring PVA and RPA together in a single demo. So I'm going to flip over to Power Automate, and let's see, I'll go over here. And what you'll find is if you've used Power Automate before, we've got several tabs where we have different types of flows that are in use within your profile. So these are all of the flows that I've created. I've got team flows, so flows where I've shared with someone else or someone else has shared with me. Business process flows come from the dynamics world and allow you to model a very structured business process with different stages and milestones. And now we've got UI flows, which allow us to do UI-based automation. So what we can go ahead and do is I'll just show you a very quick example. We've got two modes. We can go ahead and automate the UIs of a desktop app or a web app. In this case, we're going to show you both today, but for the Hello World example, we're going to go ahead and use a desktop app. So we go ahead and click that. We provide a demo. So we'll just call this M365 demo. And then we'll go ahead and click next. Now here's the opportunity for me to go ahead and to provide inputs that I would go ahead and use to feed this application that I'm going to drive through a UI. So I can go ahead and start with account. Toso. Then we'll add another one for amount. We'll just say $100. And then we'll add another one for contact. Okay, great. And then we'll go ahead and click on next. At this point, we can go ahead and launch our recorder. And I can go ahead and click this button. And what's going to happen now is at the top of my screen, I now have this recording experience. So let's head over to my desktop. And I want to go ahead and record this ERP application. So let's go ahead and click on record. And now every step that I perform is going to go ahead and be recorded. So here's my legacy, basically ERP, where I'm going to go ahead and create an invoice inside of the system. So I'm going to go and first I'm going to click on this new record, and you can see when I highlight over icons, they turn blue. And you want to make sure that it is blue before you go ahead and click on it. Now what I can go ahead and do is use inputs. So in this case, I've got account name, a contact, and email address. So what, that was on the wrong screen. So I can go ahead and click new. I've got account, contact, and amount. So I'm in account. So let's go ahead and use that input. And then we'll do the same for contact. So naturally, this is just like test data at this point. But the magic happens, or the real value happens, when we go ahead and plug in our automated flows with these UI flows. And so here, let's go ahead and enter amount. And right now I'm just using the mouse to do this, but I can go ahead and use keyboard shortcuts as well. And in this case, we'll go ahead and click save. Now, naturally, inputs are great, but what about outputs? And so we can go ahead and capture outputs too. And here, what we'll go ahead and do is select this specific input and then indicate the name of our output. And we can go ahead and click save. And then we'll now go ahead and click done. And so if we pop back over to our UI flow, we can see all of the steps that just took place here. Naturally, we can rename them. We do capture how long it took for you to record it. So when you play it back, you may not want it to take that long. So I could go ahead and change this 4 seconds to like 1 second or no seconds. And what's also neat is we've been able to capture a picture of exactly the step that I just executed. And so that gives you the ability to go ahead and validate this. Now, once I'm done with this, I can go ahead and test it. And so here, just to show some differences here, we'll go ahead and click on test now. And as a recommendation, we're doing this essentially like in attended mode. So when the bot is running, I shouldn't be trying to type or use the mouse. And so in this case, my hands are away from the keyboard and mouse, and it's really now the bot that is going to go ahead and execute all of these different steps. And this is an example of, while I was explaining this to you, it recorded that same duration. So it might seem a little slow because I was explaining it to you. That's where you would go in and tweak those values so that you wouldn't have to go ahead and sort of sit through all of this unnecessarily. And then the other important thing to note is that once you've got these inputs, like I've manually gone through and identified them, but I can use dynamic content from like an API flow itself. Like, so I might go ahead and talk to AI Builder or talk to SharePoint. I can use data from those data sources as my inputs. And then certainly once I've gone ahead and outputted information, I can go ahead and use that data in downstream actions as well. So everything looks good. I can now go ahead and save and exit. And we've got my UI flow right here. So if I was to go ahead, and it's just saving right now, and use this particular UI flow, I can just head over to My Flows. We'll click on New, in this case, just to keep things simple. It's going to be instant from blank, and we'll just call this M365. We'll manually trigger this flow. And now what we can do is find our UI flow. It essentially shows up through a connector-based experience. It does require a gateway, so that is something that I've already configured ahead of time. But here we can see our M365 demo. We're going to choose to have it attended so everyone can see it. And then we could go ahead and use this specific content, this dynamic content from previous steps. And certainly if we go ahead and let's just add a compose shape here, we can go ahead and use the output. So you'll recall we had an attribute called my output. I could go ahead and use that downstream. Now that's just the hello world example. So let's just go ahead and just show you another example here. And so here we're going to combine Power Virtual Agents and Power Automate. And the scenario is just around a timesheet. And in this case, we've got a timesheet application. Let's be honest, there's not a lot of them that are really great to use. And in this case, it's going to be on premises, and it's this intranet website that we want to go ahead and we want to automate the inputs and our timesheet. And we're going to do that from a chat-based experience. So let's just head back over to Power Virtual Agents. And I have a topic here somewhere called Submit Timesheet. And so let's just go ahead and let's reset this. And I'm just going to indicate submit time. This bot is now going to go wake up. It is asking me to authenticate. Obviously, we want to ensure that we are authenticated. And something you're going to notice as part of this process is that not once is my name being prompted here, but we're going to see when we enter the timesheet that my name is available. I'd like to submit a timesheet. Yes, please. Then let's choose support. And for a specific day, let's just put today, 05/27/2020. And then we'll put 3 hours. And so what's going to happen right now is that we're going to kick off that Power Automate flow, which in turn is going to start up our UI flow. And in this case, the UI flow is going to drive a web application, a legacy web application where we can go ahead and enter in our time and then go ahead and submit it. And then we can go ahead and see that it was successful, and that we will then see that acknowledgement come back up here in the chat window itself. Now, in terms of how that was built, here is the our design, our Power Automate flow, where we can go ahead. Once again, we're going to get details from Graph. We're going to parse it so we have a typed response. Then we can just go ahead and call this UI flow. In this case, it's going to be web-based, and these are all of the inputs that we're going to go ahead and provide. So we've got our given name and surname; those are coming from Graph, and then we've got the date, project, and hours; those are coming in as part of the original request. And then we can go ahead and output the submission status. So on the website itself, you saw it, there was a message that said, yeah, your timesheet has been successfully submitted. We can go ahead and grab that value from the web app and return it back to the Power Virtual Agent. And we can see that right here. And we can go ahead and say that, yes, this did answer my question. And then this is that survey I was talking about where I could say, yes, I just had a good experience. And this then gets captured as part of our overall telemetry. All right, so we're almost at time here. So I do want to leave you folks with some resources that you can go ahead and take advantage of. Naturally, I've got a YouTube channel. You're going to find a lot of content on Power Virtual Agents and Power Automate, and including UI flow. So encourage you to check them out. Also, I've got some links here just from some Microsoft content as well. So persona-based training. We also have some tutorials where you can go ahead and follow along. I also have Power Virtual Agents in a Day content. We will have RPA in a Day content very, very soon, made available publicly. So do keep an eye open for a blog post on that. And then also I do want to call out that we recently had the Microsoft Business Application Summit, where we did have a lot of customers talking about Power Automate, and some in particular around UI flows. And so you can go ahead and follow this link here, this aka.ms/pack-cbu, and see a real customer scenario on how they went and implemented RPA using Power Automate. So with that, we're pretty much right at time. So I certainly want to thank you for tuning in, and it was great to share this information with you all. Also, don't forget the raffle, so you can go ahead and enter to win an Oculus Quest. And then lastly, I will leave you with, there's an opportunity to donate, and then also the ability to submit some feedback. So obviously we'd love to hear from you. If there's things that you'd like to see, things you'd like to see differently, we're open to that feedback. So once again, thanks for checking out my session.